Oh, that's okay.
If you need to send anything, you can always put something in the chat to the hosts and panelists there, Pete. All right. I'm starting to see a lot of folks pop in. I see 25, 27. That number is just ticking up very quickly. We will get this kicked off right at 1:01 Eastern. So feel free to find yourself in the chat. If you, I always am a fan of networking, pop your LinkedIn in there, where you're from, what events you'll be at next. It's going to be a little bit before I'm at one of the bigger industry events. I'll be at the Access Retail Leadership Forum next month, and then I know I'll be at LPRC. I may be walking the floor at GSX, so feel free to pop in the chat where you're going to be and who you're with, and yeah, definitely we'll get this kicked off right at 1:01. See a message on can't hear anything, so hopefully everyone can hear us. If somebody can pop in the chat, if you can hear us, that'd be awesome. And then you may need to, perfect. So if somebody can't hear us, so you may need to check your speakers or restart your computer. Feel free, but we will get this kicked off right at 1:01 Eastern. Thank you so much for joining us. I see a good amount of participants already and look forward to this webinar. John, are you outside?
I am outside.
That is awesome. I want your background. I was like, is that a
well, it's one of those. It is not AI generated.
Well, I saw the clouds moving, so I was like, I think that's real.
Oh.
So, John, I'm sure we'll get into it now, but people are jumping in.
Work.
Where are you? Why don't you tell us that? Why don't you tell us? Thank you for joining us today, but I'd like to let them know that you're not in the normal Florida area.
This is not South Florida, even though we've gone through a lot of changes as a state lately. I'm actually up in Maine with a group that's focused on education policy, and so kind of diving into some stuff as we look towards the start of next session in the K-12 arena, which is another area I'm passionate about. But they're doing a working lunch right now, so it actually worked out. I was able to step out and still have good Wi-Fi. And Pete Morello and Angela Bonds are the only two people on the face of the earth that could get me to do a Zoom call while we're up here in Maine. So thank you guys again for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us.
And actually, you know, John, it's kind of funny. I was just telling Angela that as we're looking at a picture of your dad next to the governor and your photo, that competed against your dad in Dancing with the Martin Stars for the fundraiser for Healthy Start, the sheriff.
That's right.
When he did the foxtrot, I did the salsa, I think, or mambo. I did the mambo. We ended up raising over $100,000 that year for healthy babies in Martin County. And then your older brother was in the lip sync battle last year with as a hometown hero, being a veteran like you. And we raised over $300,000 at that event that I was hosting for the families here. So our relationship is definitely a family-oriented relationship.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, it is 1:01 Eastern. I do want to make sure I respect everybody's time on the call. Thank you so much to everyone who's joining us. I'm sure we'll probably have a couple more pop on just as people are transferring from meeting to meeting. But I'm super excited for today's session, cracking down on retail theft. Today's session is brought to us by CIS. They are today's webinar sponsor. CIS has been providing anti-theft solutions for Zone 1, counterfeit bill detection, and security ink products since 1989. CIS has revolutionized the alarming tether using an IR signal to deactivate alarms and protecting the lock and alarm mechanisms from tampering. Unauthorized detachers will activate the alarm when they're used. CIS has also contributed to the development of their counterfeit bill detectors and money scales while they rigorously test them. They have many products in their catalog, so if you don't see what you need on their website, they can either make it or they'll find someone who can. We know that retailers need ROI and the ease of use for their associates, and they love to make sure that everyone is having a positive customer experience. So make sure to see what solutions that they have on their website and chat with them about what they can do for you. Otherwise, I'm going to go through just a couple of logistics about the recording. My name is Julie. I am the director of the partnerships and the partnerships over here at the foundation. So I'm super excited to have CIS on today's webinar. Partnering with everyone is truly amazing. Today's session is being recorded, and when you entered, you have been muted. So if you do have any questions, please pop those questions in the Q&A box so that way that we can get those answered. If you put them in the chat, it just makes it a little bit harder to make sure we're hitting all of those. You can be anonymous when you're asking a Q&A question, so feel free to use that Q&A box throughout the webinar. We'll have that Q&A piece right at the end of the webinar. And if they can't answer your questions because we run out of time, they're absolutely more than happy to follow up with you afterwards. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Pete. Pete Morello Jr. grew up visiting the corporate office as a child with Peter Sr. And Pete will someday take over the CIS Security Solutions group over there to continue with the tradition of creatively impacting strength through design, development, and delivering the retailers what they need. So Pete, I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to you so that way you can introduce John and Angela and take it away.
Awesome. So I would like to introduce you guys. Thank you guys so much for having me. LPF, thanks so much for the opportunity. I'm going to start with John since his picture is next right underneath mine. John Snyder, being a member of this community for a very, very long time. I've known him and his family for a long time. He served this country as a Marine and was deployed in Operation Enduring Freedom. Thank you for your service there, John. When he came back, he felt like that service was just not enough, I guess, and decided to get into public service again. And he did exactly what our county needed, was retain that vote in Tallahassee. There was a risk of our small little county to maybe get missed. And John kept a Martin County resident in that seat. And it was a fun day at Harry and the Natives down here when we saw that happen. It was electric. So far, John has done so much work. Angela can tell you that he, as a freshman representative, did so much more work than ever expected, and he's really going up the ranks. So John, I want to thank you again so much for spending your time and taking time away from everything that you're doing to help our state to talk to a lot of these loss prevention folks who want to do exactly like you're doing, have a safer and more kind of common sense way of dealing with this. Now let's jump to Angela Bonds. So Angela, I've never actually met in person, but I have her because she's done so much work up in Tallahassee, helping out folks before she joined the FRF. She brings like 15 years of experience. She joined the Florida Retail Federation last year, I think, or no, this 2023-ish, somewhere right around here, June. I don't know where you joined. Yeah, sorry that I can't remember. But let's talk about the work that she did. I mean, the House, majority leader, there's a quote here. I'm not going to read it. Maybe I'll type it in, that basically says she's a consummate professional and brings just hard work ethic and the way to get things done to Florida Retail Federation. Just to let you know, what the Florida Retail Federation oversees is around 270,000 retail businesses is who they help. And retail jobs are about 1/3 of the employment in the state of Florida. So when you're talking, the other big ones are like probably healthcare and education. The Florida retailers are right up there. So thank you, Angela. I'm glad that the Florida Retail Federation scooped you in. I see your name in those committee meetings a lot when I'm looking at the Florida stuff. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to jump right in. Right. So first, I'm going to have you start, Angela, if that's okay, John. You can jump in at any moment, but I don't want to keep you too long if you need to jump away from your working lunch. But I was just hoping that Angela can kind of talk to us about 3 points, kind of the impact on business, what they affect on the cost and pricing, and kind of the long-term effects of theft and why it's so important for us to do laws like this.
Sure, absolutely. So a lot of our retailers, when we were trying to pass the theft bill this past year, we really wanted buy-in from them and stories that they had of retail and how it was impacting their businesses. One of our members actually say they take nationwide about $1 billion hit every year due to shrink, and most of the shrink is because from theft. And so you see, you know, when you walk into a CVS store, you see a glass case maybe holding soap, which that's kind of weird to see $3 soap behind a glass case, but that means that that product is probably the one that that's most being impacted. And in that process, you see where, you know, you have the store employee at the front, whereas they have to leave their station and go and unlock the case. Therefore, and staffing issues are increasing because we have to have more staff across the board. And we often have businesses, you know, that are putting resources in to combat this. That is a cost to them. So therefore, their bottom line is being impacted just from, you know, a bottle of soap being stolen or things like that. So across the board, we see a rising cost to our retail association members, just in, of course, the staffing, the labor, along with a lot of other things. I can't hear you.
Pete, I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry, and a rule, right? When I talk and I'm muted, that means I owe you a beer. So if you see me out,
Okay.
you tell me you're at this webinar, you like, Pete, you talked when you were muted, you owe me a drink. It
So
could
I'll
be a
just start
soda,
my-
be a
my
beer, be a
tallies.
drink, but write it down, guys. All 100
I'll
something
start
people,
my
I'm
tallies.
gonna go broke, but I'll try not to do it again. John, going to you, you know, as a lawmaker, did you hear that as well? That it was affecting the businesses and like the communities? Like, was there a broader community effect, you think?
Yeah, I think, you know, this is one of those issues that really impacts everybody. And I think the ripple effects that we've seen, especially in other states that have really taken, you know, it's not even a hands-off approach. It's almost, I would say it, almost a pro-criminal mentality where you have lawmakers that are openly saying we are going to legalize petty theft. And what that does to the supply chain, what that does to the store owners, to the loss prevention professionals, to the consumer, it impacts all of us. And so in this role, always looking for community engagement, the number of store owners, both mom and pop, all the way up the industry food chain, that was the common theme. What can Florida do to send that signal?
Oh no.
That we are not going to tolerate this. Bills are on this one. Representative Rommel, who really thought outside the box. We tried to tackle two things at once, not only retail theft, but also porch piracy, to again send a signal to the store owners, to the insurance providers that are having to underwrite some of these risks, that we take this seriously. We are a pro law and order state, and we're going to have the backs of our small business owners.
Now, when we're talking porch piracy, right? It is a felony if the item you take is over $40. I think I can go to Chick-fil-A and not spend $40 now. So like that's a strong stance. And some of the other big stances, John, in this law, and Angela, we can talk about it too, is some of the new language you added. And I'll ask you guys what the new language you added, but when I read the 83-page bill, some of the stuff that looked new to me was recruiting people on social media actually increases the offense. That's interesting. I'd like to talk to that a little bit about that, John, why you felt that was important. And Angela, kind of when you guys were in those rooms, how'd that come in?
Well, love to hear your thoughts on this one too, Angela. I'll just jump in and say, one of the things that we know about human nature is people are very innovative. A lot of times we wish that some of these criminals who run very complex and organized organizations, that, man, if you could only put half that energy into productive society, in a way, it's a form of entrepreneurship. With that being said, law enforcement and policymakers are always going to play that cat and mouse game. How do you craft laws that give law enforcement the ability to keep up with these trends? And so to that end, what you touched on earlier, Pete, the value of what constitutes second-degree felonies, third-degree felonies, misdemeanor theft, the criminals know that. And so that's part of how we got into this mess in the first place, is they would walk in, oftentimes an organized group, and that's where the social media piece comes in. They would recruit these individuals, send in, sometimes a handful. We've all seen the video clips of the entire store takeover, but targeting these low dollar amounts. And so by really rewriting how we handle petty theft, and certainly how we handle organized petty theft, that does bring in social media recruitment, that does bring in that look, we don't, as bad as it is for the individual who walks in and steals a candy bar, we know that is different from the types of behavior that we're targeting here. And so when you're coming in mass, when it's pre-planned, when you're targeting specific items of merchandise, again, that's the type of behavior where we say that is organized retail crime. We will increase the penalties. We will lower the threshold of what it takes to actually cross that point when we recognize those trends in the criminal marketplace, so to speak.
And just to add on, one thing I appreciate about Representative Snyder and our legislature is they look at what's going on around the country and try to combat it before it comes to Florida. So we haven't had, a lot of the smash and grab things that they've had, say, in Chicago and things like that, because our legislature is so innovative and looking ahead at what could potentially happen and go ahead and combating that before it even comes to fruition in Florida.
So thank you so much, Angela. What I'm hearing is you're right. Those smash and grabs, those flash mobs, those organized attacks, a lot of the conventions that the folks that are on this call attend, and the ones that I attend, almost one session a day or more has turned over to what's really important is the safety of the employees and our staff, right? And that's a big fear when these people are getting this brazen. And so, I love what you're hearing, saying you wanting to stop it happening here in Florida. How much of that was talked about? Mental health, being in part of an armed robbery, or being in part of a theft, feeling helpless, that type of stuff. What do you guys think? Did any of that come into the conversations at all, or?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Representative.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Angela. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to say different situations that we heard from our retailers were, so, you have an 83-year-old retired gentleman that he simply asked a customer for a receipt. The customer pushed him down and ended up, the man died from his injuries. So our retailers are very apprehensive in wanting to put their employees at the front line. So I think that that was probably one of the main concerns in looking at this, is how do we stop it before it starts impacting our employees? And then we have some retailers that they say, do not engage at all. Your safety, call law enforcement, let law enforcement engage. And so the legislature has actually funded us to help run this website called Force, which actually allows the law enforcement and the retailers and the prosecutors to all go in and look at trends on things that happening and pictures. And so you see this car in the parking lot. And so because of the legislature, we're able to do way more than, you know, just with the funding purposes that they've provided us. And of course, the Attorney General has been completely on board with this and very involved. So
Ashley Moody speaks often and well. She's a little frightening and fantastic at the same time. I'm sure we'd all agree to that. But yeah, so jumping over to John, and actually I'm looking over to the right. Todd Egan said, we've experienced increased turnover because of stress, dealing with that. And Todd, I don't know who you're with, but thank you for adding that into the slide. But John, let's jump a little bit about that. Customer safety, community safety, that type of stuff.
Yeah, well, look, at the end of the day, from what we expect out of society is that when you go to the store, you can walk into the grocery store, you can walk into the hardware store, buy what you need without getting accosted. Again, unfortunately, what we've seen is, and again, this is not a political conversation, but it is just the fact of when we look around from various states, words matter, policy matters, and your stance, just an overall public safety, it matters. You hit the nail on the head. We can in Tallahassee, we can write the toughest laws in the book, but if you don't have an attorney general or a state attorney or a sheriff, a police chief, town council that is pro public safety, well, it's all for nothing. And again, I think that's what we've seen in some of these other states. That's why Florida is booming. We could talk about affordability and some of those other pieces, but more people are coming to Florida than any other state, and that's for a reason, because they know at the core basics of what you expect from government, public safety, that is something that we take. There is nothing above that. That is first and foremost, because without that, that's where you begin to see that spiral effect that we're seeing around the country, where stores are closing, people will refuse to go to the store, and the impacts that has are devastating. And so again, grateful to be a part of that overall community. Again, it's every all hands on deck in this fight. And so I see the numbers. I know the work that this group does, and there's no doubt that through just the years and the trends that have happened, using your strength in numbers to elevate those concerns, that's how ultimately we are held accountable as elected officials, because we know the public demands something better than what we've seen in some of these other places.
Thanks, John. And now I consider this kind of a softball question, but I think it was the reason why we're here today, and I was so excited, is why do you think Governor DeSantis and Attorney General Ashley Moody felt like the place they should sign this bill was off of exit 101 on 95 in Martin County, Florida?
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of great friends throughout the state that are elected sheriffs, but they all know this. I can't hide my bias. My dad is also our sheriff here in Martin County, and that certainly has been a huge impact on just the way I see the world, and my view and the importance of public service. Whole life trying to protect others, and one of the things that he has done here in Martin County, because, and this is something, again, I have to put a plug in for some other legislation that we've worked on and where there's still more room to be done, is the phenomenon of traveling criminals. We know with the organized retail, metropolitan area, and try and just work the interstate, work the turnpike, going from store to store. And so we do experience that where we are in Martin County. It's right in between Orlando and Miami. And so for many years, that's been an easy stopping point for bad guys to come out and either look to rob, break into cars, you name it. One of the things that my dad and our sheriff took extremely seriously was sending the message, again, of deterrence to these bad actors, and ultimately built a reputation that Martin County is the hashtag wrong exit. If you're looking to pop off I-95 to do bad stuff, and so I think with all that being said, I know the governor can go anywhere in the state to go sign a bill, but it was a special treat, more so for my dad and for me to be able to watch that bill signing happen in Martin County, and again send that message far and clear. This is not the place. It's not Martin County. Not anywhere in Florida are we going to tolerate that kind of stuff.
So that was kind of canned to John. And by the way, John, when I asked that question, the chat blew up with hashtag wrong exit. Great job. Hashtag wrong exit. Martin County, hashtag wrong exit. So, so we're seeing folks from, I think, what Mark from Dick's Sporting Goods. I don't know where Mark is, where he's based, but I know that when I was at CLEAR, which is the Coalition of Law Enforcement, right, in Orlando, the amount of sheriffs that were just jealous of Martin County said that they wish they could do the policing that you guys do, that we do. It was a lot. So Angela, I'm going to kind of talk to you a little bit about, I'm sure you felt that way. I know it's really John's dad, Bill Schneider has been our sheriff, and actually John's dad before he was in, I don't know if in your seat, but he was a representative. When I met him, he was a representative before he was elected sheriff. And that was when we were young professionals, but we're not that way anymore. But moving back, Angela, how do you think Martin County was chosen for a specific reason, or is it just us Martin County folks?
I think there was a reason. I don't think the governor does anything without a reason. So I agree with because I think it says a lot when it's the wrong exit, you're not, and the location. So I do think it was very strategic.
Okay, good. So it wasn't just me.
They were coming for you, Pete. They didn't get that message out. You didn't get the memo. How was that, man?
When I saw it, man, it was the joy that I felt and the pride that I had to confess at church on Sunday, because how prideful I felt, and I know it's bad, right? Or whatever, because it was just so exciting that a hometown business, not to talk about me, to make it personal. My dad started this business in '89. I worked for him since I was 10 years old, back, part of the member of the Loss Prevention Foundation. Caroline's dad had something called the Berliner Report before loss prevention was a thing. He would put out this report on loss prevention. My dad started a newsletter that was monthly called the Multicolor Sales Record. And and we mailed them out. And I was stuffing letters at nine years old, trying to combat loss prevention since 1989. So this is like in my being, now loss prevention's a huge organization with great conferences. But my dad, when he showed at the first loss prevention, it was in a hotel with 6-foot tables. And he actually helped out another company by sharing the cost for the booth for that. Actually, he paid the full cost for the booth and allowed them to come in and use the space because they couldn't afford it yet, when loss prevention was that tiny, right? So thanks again. Very excited. So passionate. All right. Enough of that bird walk. Let's jump back to what we're talking about. I want to talk specifically about two more things. I know before we go to questions from these guys, if they have any, I do want to talk about the organized retail crime you talked about. When we're talking about felonies and 3rd degrees and 2nd degrees for that type of stuff, I get a little confused. And I really feel like your focus, like you said, on the habitual bad actors. And it said something like if they had other offenses, they would get a higher, get more time, get more criminal time, required restitution. If you could talk to me about some of the bigger teeth that you put in for those habitual offenders. And John, if you want to talk a little bit about it, Angela, if you know more, I'll let you guys go. But I'm interested in the teeth you put in here to, actually kind of stop people, deter them from doing this type of theft.
happy to jump in on that. You know, and excuse me, I'm getting over the tail end of a cold, so I apologize about that. But one of the kind of start at the highest level, our criminal, our the code, our sentencing guidelines. It is very complex. With that being said, there are a variety of things that we can look at and say, okay, how are loopholes being exploited over time? And when we look at, you know, what qualifies kind of in that repeat offender category, and when we talk about retail theft, what we don't like to see is the individual who has figured out, hey, as long as I'm staying under $600, I might get arrested, slap on the wrist, I'm out within a couple of days. Nobody's really going to go to prison over a second-degree misdemeanor, hasn't crossed over that felony threshold. Or, hey, right now in Florida, it was 30 days of a window of the time. Hey, if I just go, you know, wait 31 days every time I do this type of retail burglary or theft, the clock restarts. And so we said, all right, we're doing a couple of things. We lowered the monetary threshold, not just for the porch piracy, but also within the theft statutes. And so we kind of tiered that out. I don't have the exact language in front of me, but basically tweaked that by the dollar amount, and then also extended the window up to 120 days. So again, basically you get that 120-day mark. If you're that type of pattern criminal, it's going to hit you quicker. And what that does is it gives the prosecutors additional teeth to say, all right, you know, this is, and now the burden is still on the state. They have to prove, you know, these variety of factors that you know, make the person eligible for the enhancement. But what it does is it gives the prosecutor the tool to say, all right, you're not just going to get a slap in the wrist. You're going to big boy timeout. You're going to serve time. And I will jump in and say, part of the flip side of that conversation within the public safety realm is, okay, how do we get this individual? A lot of times these are young guys and gals who've been brought into this type of behavior through a friend, through a peer, through something. And so there is definitely a bigger picture here on how we get to the underlying issue, wraparound services, trying to break that cycle of criminal behavior. But at the end of the day, if you do the crime here in Florida, you will do extended time.
So Angela, hearing with what John said, right? I do have the language in front of me on my left screen here, so I get to cheat there, right? So we're looking at up to 5 years in prison and a third-degree felony for 5 or more individuals. Second-degree felony is 15 years in prison for if there's 5 or more individuals and they use social media. And then 30 years in prison if they have a firearm or they have 2 or more prior convictions in retail theft. Again, those are scary numbers. And the truth of the matter is, John, on our side, right, we don't want to put boosters and the lower people rungs and the victims that are being victimized to steal, right? Because the bad guys that are above them trying to get them to steal for their benefits, who we want to get. So with those type of teeth, they're like 5 years in prison. No, Tommy made me do it. They're a lot less. It's allowing us to turn those victimized people into evidence, right? And it's sometimes socially that gets a little bad, like, hey, you're going after the victimized. But I can tell you, all of the investigators, all of the deputies, all the folks I talk about, the reason why they're in these businesses is because they are service minded at heart. So it's nice to be able to have those teeth and have those attorney generals and those DAs be able to say, hey, this is what you're looking at. With your help, we can get you away from that, you know, and that's a big deal. And so thank you again. I feel like the teeth helps us turn the lower guys and girls over to get those really true bad habitual actors that are driving nice cars and that I can't afford because they're stealing $3 soap from Walgreens, right, at a crazy level, that's all bad stuff. All right, one more thing. Let's see here. So actually, I think I don't know. I'm pretty good right now Julie, on talking to this, and I liked the question that I saw that came in before, and I don't remember the exact wording. It was, Julie, do you have that question? I'm going to jump back to loss prevention. Where are you? This was a good question, John. I was like, ooh, I like this question. It's going to be fun to
Sorry, it
answer
took
for
me a
all of
second. I was trying to come off of mute, find the questions, all that, share screens all at the same time.
Yeah.
So there were a couple of questions that had come in, but I think, are you talking about the one that specifically was talking about taking 4 offenses, turning it into 1?
Okay, so I missed what you said there. I heard question and then I heard 1.
Were you talking about the question where it was taking 4 crimes and turning it into 1, or were you talking about the question that we had talked about earlier?
The earlier one, the one that we had before we even started. But we can talk
Perfect.
about whatever other questions you got.
You know, we're going to talk about them all. So we'll go
we'll get to them all.
Go in all sorts of different orders. So, John, I had a question actually come in via email earlier today. So sorry to spring this one on you. Feel free to answer as much as you can on this. But the question was, what's stopping our elected officials from passing common sense laws to support retail stores across the country with theft?
There's one word answer on that one, and it's called politics. That's what it is. It's a matter of political will. And look, I'll be the first one to say public safety is a bipartisan issue. There were Republicans who voted for this. There were Democrats who voted for this. There are just bigger forces at play in some of these states where I don't get it. To me, it just is counterintuitive to everything I believe in, but that believe that fundamentally that we just need to take it easy on these folks. And hey, if somebody is running out of your store with thousands of dollars in merchandise and you call 911 or you try to stop them, you're actually the bad guy. Right. That doesn't fly here. So it's politics. It's sad.
Angela, anything to add to that, or did he do that?
I completely agree. He hit the nail on the head.
All right, perfect. I actually like what you had mentioned earlier. You had talked about the fact that currently John and team and other folks are looking ahead at challenges in other areas of the country. John, can you talk a tiny bit about that and like the resources that you use? I'm sure we have some retailers that would be interested potentially in like how could they reach out to folks maybe in their areas geographically that they may be able to leverage and kind of help push some objectives in those spaces.
Well, nobody asked me to say this, but it is the absolute truth. I think the first and most important thing you can do, and everybody who's on this call already is get engaged with your trade associations. There is strength in numbers, and there is just when that collaboration is happening, the innovators often, and those that are in the trenches that are feeling the pain point, they're the ones that typically come up with a solution and then bring it to the policymaker. So for loss prevention, for Florida Retail Federation, for all the groups out there, the more you can get involved and then take it a step further. I know that there are legislative committees. There's opportunities to serve and try and craft legislation. Another big one, I would say, if you don't know who your state representative is and your state senator is, reach out to them. Make your voice heard, because at the end of the day, that's how the process works. Really, it's trying to address those pain points, and so I think as that happens, in our own backyard, in our own state, we want that to be contagious to other parts of the country, and so continue to lean in on those networks and collaboration.
Yeah, and John, I'm going to jump in before you do, Angela, just to talk specifically on that. That's what I do, right? There's not an event where you don't see me coming up and talking to you. I saw Brian Mast, our federal representative, and spoke to him about this, and he's like, we're working hard. It's tough. Rick Scott, I spoke to him when we all saw each other at the Republican picnic. Danny, I so bad with his last name, Gino, right?
Yep.
And speaking with Gail Harrell, talking to our local elected officials is not as difficult as you think it is. And it does help you gain a rapport and then put some real world, because they see a lot. John, you do a lot, man. There is a lot of stuff that come across your desk, and sometimes a little human interaction can help us all do better with what's coming across our desk. So I hit it on the head, John. It's great. And every other elected official I talk to about this, and I don't think it's just because some running for re-election, they all feel that theft prevention, loss prevention, and safety of consumers and shoppers is one of the top things to talk about for for legislation. So jumping back to you, Angela. Sorry to jump in there.
No, you're good. I was just going to add, and in this process with this exact legislation, we had the legislature reach out to us and say, can you ask your members what they're seeing? And so when you poll, your members that may only be Florida based, but then we have members who are nationwide. And so it's helpful when they, like our one member has $1 billion nationwide. Well, Florida is a very small piece of that. And so they look at those trends on where, the loss is actually happening. And so when you're a part of an association, we're one large voice that gets caught upon, and thankfully the legislature actually listens to what we say here. And I know a lot of other places that's not the case. So we are in a very fortunate situation with great leadership and people who actually care about small business.
Yeah. Can you talk about force a little bit? You said force. I wrote it down.
Yes.
And I don't know if that question is on your list, Julie, but I'm super excited about. I'm an excited guy anyway. But that's exciting.
I wrote the same thing down, and then we had somebody pop in a question in the Q&A. Are there any plans to go national with force? So talk a little bit more about that.
So ours is the Florida Organized Retail Crime Exchange, and the retailers, the prosecutors, and law enforcement all have access. And so they all go in and are able to put their own information in, and they're able to look at trends. Of course, this is just for Florida, but we do hope it's something that sort of takes off. We've had it for 2 years now. And the legislature actually has funded us. I'm sorry, we've had it for 3 years. The legislature has funded us the last 2 years to keep it up and running in collaboration with the Attorney General. And they've also funded extra positions within the Attorney General's office to actually oversee the organized retail crime space. And so the platform is retailers can go in, and it's very user friendly. And so if you want to provide my email and contact information, anyone that has questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
I mean, way to go. Another pat on the back, John, right? Like, not only are you passing laws to say this is bad and we want it to stop, you're throwing money at it too, funding the tools that we need to help you guys get these bad guys. That's awesome. Thank you for that.
All right, so I'm just gonna make a couple comments, things that I saw in the chat. What percentage of LP still makes detainments? That's gonna be a per retailer thing. I'm not sure anybody's gonna have a solid answer on that. And then there's another one: should there be a minimum dollar amount threshold that retailers should follow before attempting to detain a shoplifter? I think kind of same vein there of everybody's got different.
Wow, right? I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? I know how I feel on it. I'm part of the amazing technology, technological advances that we're doing. We don't have to detain and stop these bad guys. If they're habitual, we're finding them. We're finding them at home. We're RFIDing, we're GPSing, we're DNA spraying, we're not using facial recognition, but we're using recognition of the way that they walk, their weight, their size. That gives us a percentage of accuracy that allows us to say within an 80 to 80% profile. So we could do 100, but we don't want to make it political that we're, Big Brother watching, right? All of that stuff is amazing. And I feel like we almost need to LPF. We need to do like a Got Milk type corporation, like commercials on TV that says Got LP. Don't worry. The bad guys might seem like they're running out, but we're going to get them. We get them. But anyway, go ahead. If you guys want to talk about detainment, you can, but that's how I feel on it. But I'm just a moderator, so I wasn't probably supposed to talk that much.
You're fine. John, Angela, any comments on that?
I think Sorry, I couldn't. Did you say Angela?
Either one, either of you. Yeah.
I saw it in the chat. Obviously, employee safety is first and foremost.
Absolutely.
And so I think every store knows better. Look, at the end of the day, it's get that good description. And I think part of that and why you don't see, like in some of these other states, the armed guard phenomenon. And look, yeah, maybe there are places in the state where that happens still, but I think when the store owners know and have the peace of mind that, hey, I don't have to be the one to catch that guy. Law enforcement coupled with technology and with a lot of times, I mean, we're seeing that more and more recovery of stolen goods, but you know, that all can be replaced. Human life obviously cannot. And so I think having that good trust and the partnership with law enforcement with good technology is the way to go.
Agree. Absolutely.
And I think the main thing for everybody who's out there and ever feels frustrated that they can't stop, know that stopping them with a $3 bar of soap that day is actually hindering the guys on the background that are going to stop them for stealing that $3 bar of soap 1,000 times. So know that you're doing your job by getting a good description and reporting it. That's the best part of what you guys can do there. So I know sometimes it feels like you're not doing anything, but if you provide good, solid, workable intel and evidence, that's really that's your job. That's what's out there. That's the important stuff.
All right, so I saw a question come in the chat. It came in pretty early, and then you touched on it just a tiny bit, John. I'd love for you to kind of go into it a little bit more. I'll ask the question, and then I'll kind of give my little take on what I think it means, and then please school me and correct me for things that I don't understand and elaborate. The question was, doesn't the time frame amendment result in decriminalization of retail theft, as it takes what would be 4 crimes, 4 30-day time periods, and turns them into 1 crime, 120-day time period, essentially converting 4 convictions into 1 conviction for the same activity? So my understanding is that it's taking those 4, but it's elevating the level of each one of those offenses. Please fill me in.
As a non-attorney or law enforcement officer, I will say, without being able to pick right through line by line, typically in that type of an instance, so kind of using that example of the 4 crimes spread out over time, once that individual is apprehended and law enforcement is able to prove that, they are still going to get charged with all of those crimes. It's just now the enhancement on those crimes now is able to be rolled up either into that new charge or again through the use of that enhancement. And then that also kind of on the back end of that is the sentencing guidelines, which is where the prosecutor and the judge will go through and actually be able to say, okay, based on and every offense has a severity ranking, severity, frequency, etc. That's where that ultimately comes in. And so I would feel 100% confident to say in no way do we lower criminal thresholds or accountability. It was definitely an enhancement and a further tightening or greater tools for law enforcement.
Okay.
All right, I saw 2 questions come in that kind of sort of touched on the same thing. And then you may have kind of touched on it a little bit earlier about just like folks in the field or with the retailers getting more involved. So that may be part of your answer. But the first question was, please advise what it will take for lawmakers to get on the same page, which y'all are doing amazing things there. So how can we spread the word? And then the second piece of it was, how could Florida help to develop these ORC divisions within y'all's own state?
Well, I think that's not to use that cop-out answer, but it's through things exactly like we're doing here, and helping to spread the word. I do think that nationally Florida often leads, but there is phenomenal legislation coming out of other states as well, and then Florida has to look at that and say, okay, well, we can't be outdone, let's go. So I think that friendly competition within some of those more like-minded states that allow us to try and collaborate, and at the same time, make sure we're tailoring our laws to the specific states and the needs of folks there. Again, I know a lot of the attorney generals and the governors, they have their own type of associations, and so part of, now that the bill is passed, that would just be, again, the public service announcement is, reach out to your friends, your colleagues, your associates in other states, and just levy that same challenge. Go have them show up at their local, at the meet and greets, or go schedule that appointment with your representative, walk in with a paper and say, hey, a state of 22 million people just did it. Here's what's happening. And so hopefully we're all moving that needle together at the same time.
I love that. It really truly is about networking. And that's really what a lot of our industry, Pete, as well as I do from the LP space. It's all about networking and how we can help.
And Fior from Walgreens wrote that they're socializing a bill right now. I'm not sure where you are, but located in the United States. But oh wait, she just messaged. She's in Brevard County. So amazing Martin County, Florida is what she wrote, but she's in Brevard County. So she's socializing something, I guess, more on a lower level there. So, okay.
Good.
Sorry, Julie, go ahead.
No, you're totally fine. So definitely have some great comments. Denise Wynn over at TJX wrote, thank you for all you're doing to address and prevent crime in Florida. We love you, Denise. She's proud to be a resident of Florida, and it's one of the biggest reasons that she lives here. So she said, thank you. Everything you do matters. So always love being able to share comments like that because sometimes what you do behind closed doors, really, it affects a lot of people, and sometimes you don't hear it.
And I won't tell you how long Denise has been with TJX but she has worked at TJX longer than I've worked at CIS, I think.
But you started when you were 10, so she could have been 10 too.
There you go.
I'm just saying, she is. Listen, you guys do the math, maybe Denise, but she is a staple in the industry.
Yes.
I absolutely. I go to her to ask a lot of questions. She's a great reference. So thank you for attending.
Denise is actually on the advisory panel for the advisory board for the LPF. Okay. So thank you for attending, Denise, and I'm glad that we were able to have you here. So this one came in. It's a little bit longer, so I would try and shorten it, but I don't want to not do it justice. So hopefully I can get this all out in one or two breaths here. Reviewing the amendment language discussed, it doesn't appear to criminalize anything, as it doesn't define the offense. Can you give an example of how prosecutors are supposed to use this without a definition of the offense? This seems very vague and not constitutional, as it does not put an otherwise law-abiding citizen on notice on what activities are illegal. And then they gave an example: acts in concert with 5 or more other persons with 1 or more establishments for the purpose of overwhelming the actually, I think this may actually be the part of the bill. Sorry about that. Acts in concert with 5 or more persons within 1 or more establishments for the purpose of overwhelming the response of a merchant's employee or law enforcement officer in order to carry out the offense or avoid detection or apprehension for the offense, and in the course of organizing or committing the offense solicits the participation of another person, the offense, through the use of a social media platform, which I do love that addition. Anyways, any comments on that? I know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that sounds like a pretty specific question, and again, I'd love to answer it. Part of what we can do here is feel free to share my office email that comes directly to my phone, and so I'd love to be able to take an actual dive into that. I don't want to shoot from the hip on that one, but it sounds like a great question, and look forward to catching up individually on that.
No, that's great dialogue. Now that one did come in from somebody that's anonymous, so feel free to send a private chat to our host and panelists. Absolutely, if you would love that, we're more than happy to share your information there. Something came in over on the chat, so I'm just gonna give it a little browse here real quick. Florida's efforts in fostering collaboration between retailers, law enforcement, and government are amazing. Such partnerships are crucial in enhancing safety and security, not just in shopping environments, but throughout the communities. By sharing information and resources, these groups can effectively prevent crime and ensure a safer experience for everyone. It's encouraging to see initiatives like these setting a positive example for other states to follow. There you go. There's another very great
Thank
glowing
you.
recommendation
I'll have
for
to
you.
put that on the Florida State House Google review page, please. We'll get a we'll take
We'll,
4
we'll
stars.
get you that comment. I love it. Yeah, we'll get you that comment for you to use. All right. So I haven't seen any other Q&A questions come in. So if you do have any other questions, I know Donna just popped in John's email there. It sounds like Angela, you're a great resource as well. So feel free to reach out to either one of them if you do have any follow-up questions. With that being said, Pete, anything else that you want to say before?
Yeah, one more. It did pop through, John. I think I'd be doing a bad job if I didn't say that Tony from Floor and Decor said "oorah."
Love it. Semper Fi, Marine. All right, guys. Thank you, Pete, the entire team, Angela. Great talking with y'all. They are giving me the signal. I've got to get back in anyway, so this is perfect timing. Look forward to, again, staying in touch. You've got my contact info. And thank you all for being on the front lines, keeping our economy going strong, and always looking out for our consumers and keeping us safe. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, John. I'm going to go ahead and close out the rest of this webinar, but thank you, John, for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a great
Take care,
rest of your
guys.
afternoon. All right, so we just finished our Q&A. So let's go ahead and go into the next kind of closing this out. Today, thank you to everyone who attended. We absolutely appreciate your attendance. We do have a promo code there, THEFT 2024, which is available through August 11th of this year. You can use that on things like the LP Qualified certification, the LP Certified certification, our ORC investigation courses and memberships. So feel free to leverage that. Yep, go ahead, Pete.
Can you use it on any merch? Like, backpacks, t-shirts?
No, unfortunately not. That's just going to be for our store. Sorry. But today, for anyone who has registered, when you registered, you did have the option to opt in to potentially being available or qualify for a course scholarship from the LPF. So if you did put that as a yes, you're interested, be on the lookout tomorrow at the latest on Monday, since I'm traveling. You do have, once I send that email, you'll have 7 days from the time that I send it to claim that scholarship. These scholarships are non-transferable, so you do have to have attended the webinar to actually be eligible, but the LPF will be issuing those. Thank you again so much to CIS for sponsoring today's webinar. We absolutely appreciate you guys. For anyone who has attended the webinar today, if you do not get our email blast to be notified of webinars and you just found us through either a CIS blast or through, I think D&D had blasted it. I know we put it on LinkedIn and social media. Please leverage that QR code, sign up on our website. We would love to be able to just go ahead and send you those emails so that you can get notified every time that we have a webinar. But again, thank you so much to CIS for sponsoring today.
And I'm interrupting you, Julie. I want to thank you for the value add, adding additional value by adding those 5 courses in there and those scholarships. That is LPF. CIS has our scholarships that we still continue to donate, but those are additional, and I would be doing Loss Prevention Foundation a disservice if I didn't say thank you for not only allowing us this platform, but allowing us another value add for this event.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again so much for being here. If you are out in the UK area, I know Pete is going to be at Retail Risk here coming soon, and the entire CIS team will be down at Gainesville for LPRC. I'll be there as well.
And I think we're going to get Angela there maybe a little bit so she can come and check out, right?
That's my plan. Yes.
It sounds like it's pretty close to your backyard in some sort of a fashion there. So yeah, hopefully we can get you there. So thank you so much, Pete. Thank you, Angela, for joining us today. It was an absolutely wonderful and informative session. Really, I love the whole networking, and y'all are setting a great example.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us. We will be sending out some emails in case you want to rewatch this later. So feel free to rewatch, share it with other folks that weren't able to attend. But until the next time, y'all have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.